Just tell me about your experience.
Well,
with big cats.
my first experience with a big cat was coming back from due west on Strawhorn Road, which is a little cut-through road here, and coming down on a creek where I used to hunt. It used to be game management land, and it got changed over to private land now. Coming up on the creek, and this huge cat came out in front of me in the road. It was a large brown mountain lion, and I can relate to it because I was sitting in a sports car very low on the ground. I mean, you know, just a few inches off the ground, and the cat was like up on as tall as the hood on the vehicle. And I said, "That's a mountain lion. I don't believe it." And I've been hunting in that area for years and never seen it before, but there it was, and it was going right back to the area where I was hunting. And that was my first experience with one.
You've had more than one.
Oh yeah, I had another one much more recently. In the past 3 years, I was hunting on a power line, and it was getting dark, almost too dark to hunt. But I heard something, and I said, well, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait. And I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, a little kitty cat, little house cat, orange and white, black, female, headed on down the side of the power line. So I said, well, I'm just going to watch it. And it went on down, got out maybe 100 yards, and I had to start watching it in my scope because it was getting that dark. And then it took a right turn and started across the power line. And within about, oh, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 seconds, a large cat, much bigger cat, walked right behind it, as if it was stalking the kitty cat, right?
Oh, wow.
And I said, "That's a mountain lion. I don't believe this. I've been hunting here for 13 years and I've never seen this cat before." But all of a sudden, there it is. And the distance between the first incident and the second incident, as a crow flies, is maybe 2 miles. So it's
maybe the same cat.
Maybe, but it was too dark to tell if it was a black cat or if it was a brown cat that I had seen originally. But I'm thoroughly convinced that it was a mountain lion because I've been a hunter for 50 years, and 52 years, and I know what a cat looks like. So.
And what do you do as a profession?
I'm retired now.
Yeah.
I was an electrician, but I'm also a gunsmith.
A gunsmith electrician.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what do you say to people who say, this is all a bunch of malarkey? There's no.
Oh no.
There's no proof for these things.
No. I mean, I know what I saw. I know exactly what I saw. I mean, I watch enough nature programs to know what a mountain lion looks like versus a bobcat. A bobcat has no tail, so to speak. You know, both of these animals had tails that were at least 2.5, 3 feet long. You're not going to find a bobcat doing that. And like I said, I was in a sports car and I was sitting literally inches off the ground, and this cat came up as high as the hood on the vehicle. If it had been next to me, I could have reached out and just patted it on the head. That's how big it was. But it stepped out in the road, looked at me, and bounded off across the road in one big leap. So they're here. They're here. I have friends that tell me they've seen them in the same general vicinity. One gentleman who unfortunately couldn't be here this afternoon, I just called him. He said he was dressing a deer, but he's seen a black one not far from here. I have another customer in my gun shop who claims to have a black one living on his property down in Troy towards McCormick. Mm-hmm. He says it hangs around his barn. I don't know. I haven't seen it. He's invited me to come down and see it, but I haven't been down there yet. But when people say, oh no, there's no such thing, I say, yes there is. I'm sorry. Yes there is. You're wrong. And I thoroughly believe that if the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources were to admit it, that they would have a problem dealing with it. I know they're short on funds. All the government agencies are short on funds. But if you admit that they're here, then they have to deal with it, and that's going to cost them money in some way, shape, or form. And I believe it says in the game laws that you're not allowed to kill panthers, right?
Right.
But they're not here.
It's a protected species.
They're a protected species, but they're not here. So.
One thing I find interesting is that all you guys I talk to, you don't seem so much interested in just promoting the fact, hey, there's panthers here, but there seems to be a general concern for letting the public know that they're here to keep the public safe.
Yeah, well, we're all aware of what's going on in California, where they banned the hunting of panthers, and since they've done that, there's been more and more attacks on humans. And I believe that if you make the public aware that the cats are here, maybe you'll never have an encounter with one. Maybe you never will. But then maybe someday you'll be walking your child through the woods on a nature walk or something like that, and you're going to have a problem. And I hate for it to happen when somebody turns around and says, "Oh, there's no cats here. You know, they're not here. I don't have to worry about that problem." You know. People come up missing all the time. You don't really know where they went to, do you? Especially in the woods. I believe you have a Clemson student missing up in the mountains right now. Haven't found him yet.
Yeah.
Who knows? So.
That was some excellent stuff. Great.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. Anything else you see as an important point that you'd like to make to the state, to the federal government?
Well, I just wish that they would acknowledge the fact that there is the possibility of them being here on their part. I mean, I know they're here. My friends know they're here. We've seen them. But to just completely deny the fact that they're not here, I'm sorry, they're not here. It just sort of, I don't know, it irks me. It irks a lot of people that they just want to ignore the problem.
Would you see it as a waste of public money if we really seriously put forth an effort as a state to document these things?
I mean, we should feel fortunate that we do have them, considering that they're supposedly been extinct in this region for, what, since 1900 or something or other. Florida's making money off of the Florida Panther with their license tags. You buy a special license plate, and that money's going, I don't know, I'm hoping it's going into Panther research. We could do the same thing here in South Carolina. We have a redfish tag, we have this tag, that tag.
Sea turtle tag.
Sea turtle tag, right, exactly. So why can't we put that to good use here, you know?
And you know, if they're not here, why would we name our football team that?
Exactly. Why does Abbeville's Panthers, why are they black? You know? You know, we have how many Panther teams in this state, you know? But they're here. They're here. They really are. And I just wish that people would become more knowledgeable about them, and that the state would at least acknowledge the fact and maybe put out some precautionary measures and so forth. But no, they just want to out of sight, out of mind, and they're not here.
So tell me about your Panther experience.
Well, it seemed like a dream, but I was bush hogging at the old family farm just right up the road, about 3 miles from here. The pasture was in pretty bad shape. We just bought a new tractor and a bush hog, and I was bush hogging. It was a little over knee high, and it's probably a 40-acre pasture. I was trying to get it ready for cattle to put cattle on. It was December approximately 3 years ago. And the more I bush hogged, every time I'd make a lap through the pasture, I noticed a little path going through the high weeds. I didn't think much about it. There are a lot of deer and turkey in the area. But about 3:30 that afternoon, I had most of that track already bush hogged, and I looked up, and there was crouching where I just bush hogged a black cat. And I knew it was a cat because it had that distinctive crouch, and it walked out into the pasture, and I had taken its cover away because I just bush hogged it. And anyway, it froze, and I just kept going. I left the PTO on the bush hog still turning. I kept going, and after I passed it, I was probably 100 yards from it. After I passed it, it ran where I had not bush hogged back into the high weeds. This was about 3:30 in the afternoon. Well, I just couldn't believe it, so I stopped and I told my sister and my wife all about it. But like I say, I lost it in the weeds. It went back into its cover. Well, the next day, I continued bush hogging and was finishing up on the other side of our pond and saw him coming from the same direction I'd seen him the day before, almost under the fence in the same spot into that pasture, which was bush hog by now. So I stopped the tractor, stopped the bush hog, but left the tractor idling and just stood up on the tractor and just stood like this watching it, and it froze and I froze. We were just looking at each other. It was probably 200 yards from me, and it finally decided to make a move and ran down toward our pond and got on the dam of the pond and then went down on the back side, and I lost sight of it. So I just put the bush hog back in, started the PTO back on the bush hog and finished up that pasture. And as I was finishing the last few runs, I saw him stick his head out of a fence line. There's cedar trees on this fence line. I saw him stick his or her head out, looking at me one more time. And then it turned and went away, and I didn't see it anymore. That was 2 days in a row, almost the same time. And I haven't seen one since. But I saw it. And I had a real close friend of mine that did some deer hunting. I invited him down to deer hunt, and he saw, we think, the same cat about a week later on a power line that crosses our tract of land. We have a pipeline and a power line that cross us. And he saw it. He was probably 500 yards away from it. And I had told him that I'd seen one. And when he got back to my house, he said, "I saw your cat." And he was going to come down today, but he couldn't make it. So I did definitely see a black cat, and it was probably, I'm guessing 40, maybe 45 pounds, and his tail was just as long as his body, or her body, and just as slick, shiny black, the slickest black I've ever seen. Just beautiful. I mean, it was just black. And it stood out. That's why you couldn't take your eyes off of it. So that's my experience with the cat.
Very nice.
From the top of a tractor.
How long ago was that?
3 years this December.
3 years ago this December.
Yeah.
And that's the neat thing. A lot of people are seeing them now. We're not talking about our granddad seeing them.
Yeah, but what, as I said when I started, the more I bush hogged, this pasture was in pretty bad shape. It had been nothing had been on it in probably 5 years. And so I was trying to get it knocked down, and I took its cover away. And that, when he first came out there in that pasture, I guess that's why he froze, or she froze, because there was no more cover. And that little path that went through our pasture, it must have been a daily route for this cat. So.
Neat story. So, what do you say to people who say that these things really aren't in South Carolina? They don't exist.
Well, I haven't really had the opportunity to confront anybody like that, but people started coming to me knowing that I've seen one, asking me about it. I haven't talked to anybody in DNR or anything, so I really can't answer that question.
But they say there are no cougars.
I've heard that. Bobby told me that. I wonder what it would take, a carcass or what?
We've had a carcass. It'd probably take more than that.
Oh, I didn't realize.
We got one that was a western cougar in Anderson County not too long ago, a decade or so ago.
Oh, I see.
But it was said to be a western cougar that was escaped as a pet from somebody. But, one of the things I see, you guys that have these stories, it's not like a Bigfoot story. It's not one or two people, and we're not wackos. I've seen a cat.
I mean, it was the last thing I ever expected to see. I mean, at the time I was living in Spartanburg, but now I retired and I moved. I'm living in Due West now. But like I said, I'd come down on the weekends and try to get as much done as I could. And like I say, it was the last things I expected to see. Yeah. But there was no doubt it was a cat. I mean, it had that crouch and just, and that tail. Oh boy.
Yeah. So, why do you think that the the DNR, most of you guys I talk to, that you really, you want to tell people about this. You want people to know about it because of safety concern.
I agree. Yes.
You think that's the important thing? You think
The main thing, yes. Mm-hmm. Small animals and small children especially. I mean, this cat could have done something to a small child.
Well, Mr. Fleming, I appreciate you being here today with me, and I'd just like to get your story.
Okay, it was one afternoon, approximately 2:30. I went out in my backyard, and I heard a noise. I first thought it was a dog, two dogs, and I said, no, it's not a dog. And I finally got close enough to see the head, and I saw the tail. And I only live approximately a mile and a half from where that pony was attacked. And I said, this probably was where it came from. But what I saw was the two cats. One had the other one pinned up against a pine tree. It must have been matings. And I froze. I knew I couldn't move. If I did, they were going to be gone.